So what we're going to talk about today is rocket propulsion. Um, there's a number of ways to kind of show how this is done, but what we're going to use primarily is balloons that are rapidly deflating. So I want to show you quickly my rocket-powered hovercraft. Ready? So all it is a straw in a board, and it's just light enough to be powered on a cushion of air. And that's all it is. So what we saw previously was like toy cars being propelled by balloons. They had an angle about like this, and they were just pushed along. The balloon was up here and then blowing out the straw. You could do that with a small boat. If you had like a small toy boat, you could do it like in a bathtub or something. There's a number of ways to do this, but basically all rockets are is air just being forced through a small hole or a nozzle in this case. So that's about it. That's what we're going to talk about. So you saw my hovercraft, and let's get on with it. So what this demonstrates is how rockets are powered. This was, don't mind the table. This was how Arctius, I believe his name was, a Greek philosopher, first kind of demonstrated the power of rocket propulsion. He used air rapidly escaping a small wooden bird, and so instead of a bird this time we're going to use a balloon. So what we're going to do is I've got a string here. It's taped to this wall, it's taped to that wall, and then we're just going to tape this straw onto the balloon, just about like that. And we're going to release this, and it should just shoot right down this string pretty easily. All right, so basically all we're going to show is this rocket propulsion through a balloon on a string. 3, 2, 1. And there it is. All right, so this is a rocket. We're going to talk about just the different components of it and how it all fits together. So this is a payload rocket, basically meaning that you can put something in the top of this. It could be an electronic device to see how high you go, or if you're trying to win a competition, maybe you put an egg in here and it'll launch it up and then come safely down. So this rocket's pretty versatile. It's pretty powerful too, and we'll talk about all that. But basically we start at the top. This is the nose cone, and it may be hard to see, but it comes to this line. And in this particular one, the nose cone comes off right here, and this is what's called the payload bay, right? And so this is where you can put electronics or eggs or whatever else you wanted to fly with in the top. You just want to make sure it's not too heavy, because then it'll have trouble flying. So then we saw in here there's a coupler. So every time that there is a section that gets connected to another section, you'll have a coupler. This one is only glued in on one side, but if you had a section here, you would need a coupler, and you would glue it in on both sides. I can show you another example of that real quick. This tube has been coupled right in the center, and it has a coupler that comes to there from there, and it's all glued together, so it won't come apart. So now that just acts as one tube. So as we move down, this is your nose cone and payload section, and then this whole piece all the way down to the end is called the airframe. So anything that is not the nose cone is considered the airframe. So this tube is all the airframe. On the inside of this, it has a shock cord attachment, and we'll talk about what the shock cord does momentarily. But it's attached way down here, and it can actually be attached anywhere inside this airframe that you want it to be. So you could have it attached up here. I chose to put it down here. So moving down the airframe body is the launch lug. This is what keeps the rocket stable before it reaches its full speed. So imagine this little stick is your launch rod. When you launch, it moves up the launch rod in a nice straight line, and then it launches up into the air. And by the time it leaves the launch rod, it'll be at a stable speed. So the fins will start stabilizing it a little bit. Inside of this thing is the parachute. This one has two parachutes. So this one has a parachute for just the payload bay, so that if you had an egg in that, it would come down real slowly. And then it has one for the airframe itself. And that's attached to, this parachute is attached to the shock cord, which, like I said, is attached way down here in the bottom. But this shock cord has just a little bit of stretch right here, and that just keeps stuff from getting pulled off when it gets ejected at the end of its flight. So moving down into the bottom here, these motors are held in by what's called a centering ring. This is a two-motor rocket, so the centering rings look different, but they're normally green like this. This is a motor mount, just like these two tubes are motor mounts. And this white tube, motor mount, is held together by these centering rings. And that just hold everything inside the rocket nice and neat. So it just keeps everything centered inside the rocket, the airframe body itself. So the other thing, one of the last things we'll talk about here are these little metal clips that keeps the engine inside the engine mount. So when the motor is in here, after it's fired, it doesn't just fall out. It stays in here, and then you can collect them up after you're done. The other thing, the last thing, is the stabilizing fins. This particular one has 6. So you've got 3 small ones, or 3 large ones here, and then 3 small ones right above it. And that is about it for a rocket. So there's basically 2 types of motors for rockets. The first is in a cardboard tube like this, and it's called a black powder motor. The propellant inside of it is actually black powder. So it burns pretty quickly, and it burns a particular way. So basically what happens is they're just inside of this little opening here is black powder. And so it burns from the end, and it burns towards the front, right? And then at the front of it, there's a little bit of a kind of a fuse, and it slowly burns for maybe this one in particular 3 seconds, and then the top end just pops out, right? So there's another little charge like a firecracker in here, and it pops out, and that's what pushes the parachute out of the rocket. So that's how these work. They burn from the end towards the top, and then the top pops off. The other type of motor is in a plastic casing. It's called a composite motor. And instead of black powder, it has a different type of flammable material in it. So instead of burning just from the end, here, this is the end, it burns from the center. So when you light this thing, you have to put your igniter all the way at the top of it, and then it burns out the center. And so instead of burning from the end forward, it burns from the center out. So it burns much more evenly, and different compositions can burn much faster, much slower. It's harder to make that with these. These kind of burn at a pretty consistent rate. But in the top of these, they also have a delay, a little fuse, and then an ejection charge, and that pops out and it shoots your parachute out of the top. And that's basically the 2 types of rocket motors that we're ever going to deal with. On to homework here. Are there any questions from the group right now? Put this way, I'm listening. No questions. All right. Yes, there's extra credit. So, the extra credit. Is everybody ready? I feel like there was a lot of screaming going on behind muted microphones. All right, so the extra credit, if you would like to, is to build a lifting bird balloon. Right? So instead of flying this way, I want you to fly that way. So we're going to use a door frame as our measure. Right? So from the ground to the top of a door frame, who can lift the most amount of weight? And let's use standard measurements of weight. Let's use keys. The most keys with their balloons. And you can use as many balloons as you want. Fair? All right, so let's get to actual homework. So what you're going to need from this is on the screen. A notebook. Always have a notebook. You have to take notes. My notebook is right here. I always keep it with me. You're going to need a soda can of your choice, a string. You can use any string you want. Here's some string. Here's some fishing line. Any string you want. You're going to need nails, pens, pencils, right? Again, whatever you want. These are nails. So, tape, sticker, marker, anything that you can mark the can with. A bucket full of water. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to tie a piece of string onto your can. This isn't magic, I'm holding it by a string. You're going to mark it somehow so that you can see a mark on it real easily. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to make what's called a hero motor. And we're going to try and spin this can as many times as we can. So you'll take a nail and use different size nails, test it out, see which ones work. But you're going to take a nail and you're going to poke it into the can and you're going to make a little bitty hole. Now, I have found, and this is the hint, if you poke the nail into the can, then you want to turn it. So as you're looking at the end of it, you're going to poke the nail into the can and then turn it, and that helps it spin. Spins a lot faster. So what we need to answer is how many times can we make this rotate with just being full of water? And then what does that look like for your maximum rotations? How many holes should you put in it to make it spin the most times? So I'm going to demonstrate. This is mine. I have been studying this for years, and I totally didn't arbitrarily do this last night for the first time. So you're going to fill it with water. You're going to make sure that your mark is pointed towards you, and then you're just going to lift it out of the water and see how many times it spins. And you got to count each time that mark goes by. And then once it starts turning back the other way, that's it, you stop. Okay? Any questions? How many did I get? Anybody count? It's a lot cooler if you can see it in person because it goes really fast. Any questions? Absolutely. I'll do this every time. This is fun. Okay. So you fill up your can. You make sure you can see the mark really well, and you just lift it up.
It's too fast.
And stop. How many times? Who counted?
That's right.
60.
Liar.
All right. Any questions about the homework or the extra credit? Nothing? Good. So, one of the things I wanted to talk. No, yeah, record it. We're gonna talk about it next time. So you guys need to take notes, and if you want to record it, that's cool too. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is different size cans. Make sure you're always using the same size can and not soaking your computer when you do this. But so if you use a Red Bull can, keep using the Red Bull can. If you're using a soda can, always use a soda can.
IPA soda.
They can hear you.
It doesn't look like soda from here.
It is grapefruity. All right, guys. Thanks for coming. That's all I got. I will hang out if there's any questions. I need to clean my computer now.